Good day and welcome everyone. This is Becky Piper from SuccessFactors IT North America. We're glad you're able to join us this afternoon for our webinar. Today we're going to talk about how you can easily identify quick and easy ways to optimize your existing HCM and payroll processes with focus on document generation. Document generation is an often overlooked process, but provides the most ROI across various HR lifecycle stages. Gallo, one of our colleagues here at SuccessFactors IT North America, will show you how you can identify opportunities to improve your document generation processes, enhance your user experience, while bringing massive time, effort, and cost savings to your organization. Before we begin, we'll flash some of our housekeeping rules. If you have any questions at any point, just send them over using the questions box in your app, or send us a follow-up question at info@spinifxit.com. Customers and partners can access a recorded version of the webinar through our customer care portal. We'll send a copy of the session as well following the presentation. Without further ado, I'm handing over the presentation controls to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Wonderful. So hi, everybody. My name is Gallo. I'm the product architect for North America for SuccessFactors IT. And I kind of wanted to do something a little different today with our webinar. When we do a lot of webinars, we're always talking about, what our products can do. And, it's more geared towards a sales thing. But honestly, I gave this presentation, or at least a version of it, at a couple conferences. And it was received pretty well, because really what I want to do is educate on the whole doc gen process from a holistic manner at your organization, not so much focusing on the software. And when I think about document generation, for those of you on the call, if you're looking at this slide, it kind of covers every role, within HCM, all the different departments, from recruiting, when we talk about offer letters, right? That might be one of the first correspondences a candidate or a potential employee receives from you. And then we go through the whole life cycle of employment, the requesting of employees for their information, verification of employments, all the movement that occurs within an employee. They might get a letter every time their position changes. They get a small pay change. There's those administrative things that you might have to provide to the government, visa forms of that nature. We even, of course, have benefits and pay in there when you talk about enrollment forms, total compensation or reward statements. And then finally, at the end of the life cycle, there's documents where there's, you have to terminate somebody. I've even seen in countries out there where the employee actually has to generate a document that says they're going to resign. It has to be in an official form out there. So document generation covers the full gamut of your organization. And what I want to try to do today is show you, especially if you're thinking of a document generation project, or you have use cases you want to improve, how to go about getting that started in your organization, where to look for that low-hanging fruit, and try to find that ROI. Because what we got to talk about is why are the reasons we do doc gen and how we're doing it today. And the first reason that we do doc gen is because of compliance, because we have to, right? When you think about document generation, I always say, and I work in HCM, I've been doing it almost 15 years now. If we're not laughing, we're crying. And document generation is not the most riveting of topics, right? It's kind of boring. So the reason we're doing it is from a compliance nature. We have to do it either for some government or municipal regulation out there, or it's a company mandate, right? You have specific business processes that you've come up with that say, you know what, for this, we're generating a document. So you're doing it because of compliance. And compliance, when you think about doc gen, is also twofold. It's not so much you're doing it because you're being compliant. It's also how you're doing it, right? When I think about improving document generation in an organization from a compliance manner, right now, some of you on this phone are at maturity level 1. I always talk about things in business processes in maturity levels. We'll do 1, 2, and 3 today. Maturity level 1 for doc gen is you probably have some shared drive out there, and someone requests a document that they need. And then your HR person, whoever's responsible, goes out to that share drive, opens up the Microsoft Word template, populates that template with that information, and then sends it off to the employee. We have no real control over that, right? That HR person or whoever department is producing that document, they can mess it up, right? We're human. We make mistakes, typos. They could put things in that document that maybe should not be in there from a company standpoint. So you have to think about compliance in that way too. How can I make this process more compliant so I'm ensuring that I'm sending the right documents every time? So you're trying to be compliant, and what you're also trying to do is reduce the manual effort, right? If you're still at maturity level 1, You have these people out there that are taking their time to populate Microsoft Word templates. In this labor market, I always used to say, good people, really good people are super hard to find. And in this labor market, it's absolutely impossible, right? So you have these people who have skills that work at your organization filling out document templates, right? Their skills could probably be better served helping your company move the needle in the right direction as opposed to filling out Microsoft Word templates. So you're spending time that you shouldn't be spending on manual effort producing a document out there. But the reason you might be doing that is because of the design options. Before we came into the marketplace, we've looked at different doc gen solutions, and you probably have as well. Some of them out there, they don't offer the best design to build a document. In some cases, they're basic at best. You can include like your company logo and some text, and that's it, right? You get no specific branding. Sometimes you can't even get your right color for your organization in there. And that's the reason why you still might be doing it in Microsoft Word. I can't tell you the number of customers who have come to us with that specific reason. We're not using solution XYZ from this specific vendor because we can't build it the way we want to, right? I even found an organization that was spending money to put Adobe Acrobat on everyone's computer. They were building these nice PDFs. So the documents that they sent out were really nice out there. So one of the reasons you might not be doing it is because of limited design options. Well, we want to make sure, you need to make sure that if you're looking at any vendor, including us, that the document can be produced in the way that you want it. I always say the first thing you should do when you're shopping a vendor is, here's my corporate letterhead, make sure this works. If it doesn't, just move on, right? And you want to improve the user experience, right? So it starts back at that, these are the reasons we're building a use case for document gen in your organization, right? If you have to present it. We want to improve the user experience, but the user experience, again, is twofold. First, we want to get rid of the manual effort, right? We don't want our staff sitting there filling out Microsoft Word templates and struggling through that process, taking minutes out of their day, multiple times a day, multiple times a week to do this. But the user experience, we also want to improve on the recipient as well, right? When I think of a document generation process, there's a couple ways to look at it, right? Somebody might just produce a document and it gets sent and that's it. But there's other aspects of doc gen where there's like workflow involved or signatures involved. How hard was it for the end user receiving the document to perform what they had to do? Did they have to download the document, wet sign it, throw it in a scanner, attach it to an email, send it back, right? Is there a way that we can improve that process so it's literally a couple clicks, get it routed to where it needs to go, and possibly even signed? So it's another big use case for document generation. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of workflow out there. And we're getting better at this as a company as well. We're not perfect either because it's really hard, right? Documents that get generated might have to go to certain places for certain areas of approval, right? So an action gets performed in an employee. We need to generate that letter. That letter needs to be seen by an HR VP and then an HR VP. And then it can finally be said that, yes, this can go, to the actual recipient itself. So having that level of integration with perhaps your organizational structure to move these documents where they need to be is highly important too when it comes to document generation. But here's what we have to do. If you want to build a business case for document generation, and some of these steps might seem obvious, you need to do a few things, right? And the first step you need to do is identify what you want to do from a document generation standpoint. And you always ask is, where do we start, right? When I think about doc gen, a customer always comes to us with one specific use case. They'll be like, we want to do a total compensation statement. And that's great. But not many customers are willing to spend the kind of money on a solution just for total compensation statements. Granted, as a vendor, we can price things based on certain documents. Other vendors don't. It's all or nothing, right? You get the software, you don't. So you have to find other places to look for doc gen solutions. So where do you start? We'll start with what you have to do, right? That first thing of compliance that we had out there. Look at the things that you have to produce, regardless if you have a document generation solution or not, right? Maybe it's the government regulations that you have out there. We have customers out there that anytime somebody moves internationally, they have to get a letter. That person even has to sign the letter to say they agreed to move internationally for the company out there. But then, of course, you have all your internal things as well, right? You have SOX controls. Perhaps you're producing data out of the system and someone has to sign off on it that it's correct. And then, of course, you have things like the employee life cycles, new hires, people changing, and contracts, right, recruiting and all that. Those are things like you have to do in certain cases out there. So start there. That's always a fine place to start. So you say, like, all right, we have this total compensation statement we want to build. But you know what? We could probably find some ROI in some other places as well. So always look there. Then there's some other places to look. And this is my little matrix of where we're going to look out there. We're going to talk about the matrix, and then we're going to show you exactly which departments to go look in to get the ROI built out very quickly. To start out with, obviously on the slide, we have the gamut of organizations within our company: service centers, payroll, the HR side, benefits, compensation. And what we have to look at first is the service centers, right? And we have to think of service centers got very high volume of documents, right? That's why they're there. That's why it's consolidated, because they can produce a lot of different stuff in one location. But the complexity of those documents is usually low, right? It might be just a basic confirmation of employment statement, that says the person works at a company. Could be certain forms that employees can request out there. Super high volume, but typically low complexity. Then you go over to payroll. Typically very low volume. I don't see a lot of payroll documents going out there, maybe a claim letter now and again. But the ones that we do produce, they're usually of medium complexity, because you have to be familiar with the payroll process to actually produce it, right? There's definitely a skill set there to understand when you want to ensure that a document is being produced correctly. Then you have the whole HR talent side, right? Those are those boxes we looked at earlier where we have employee life cycle events, hires, terms, right? That volume is high. It just is. And the complexity can be medium to high in that, especially when you're looking at recruiting letters, letters of offer. You got to make sure you get that offer letter right. And there's usually a lot of addendums and paragraphs that need to go in there. So there's a certain amount of complexity there. Benefits is medium volume, and that volume occurs at different times of the year. It all depends on your organization, how you have your benefits structured, if it's outsourced or you keep it inside. And that's of a medium complexity, because there's usually a lot of rules around who gets what benefit and whatnot. And then, of course, we have compensation. And when I think of the compensation department, I'm usually thinking, and sometimes this falls under benefits, like a total rewards letter or a compensation statement. You're usually only doing that one or a few times a year, so very low volume. But the complexity is usually high, right? You have 1,000 different pay codes and different things that an employee can be enrolled in out there. And you have to make sure that those appear the correct way. But here's where you look, right? When you want to start a DocGen project and you want to find ROI very quickly, because again, you probably came to the realization like, hey, we want to do a compensation statement, and that's great, right? But what's the ROI on a compensation statement? We got to find more. This is where you go look, right? You start with those life cycle and those HR events out there because of two reasons. One, they start out at low complexity and there's medium complexity, so you can knock off the low-hanging fruit with the low stuff. But more importantly, you have the high volume. I'm going to show you a chart later of just 6 different examples that we put through. Because when you start to have the volume, the savings, the ROI becomes really significant very quick, right? You might only be saving minutes on one document, but the volume that you're producing of it over the course of the year is so high, it ends up that you end up with a drastic ROI very quickly. So this is where I tell people to look. Go to the HR side of it. And then, so that's point one, identify what you want to do and try to find, those documents that are getting you. And then you have to measure it. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut here when it comes to measuring. Everyone always asks me like, what should we do? How do we go about it? And it's not simple, but it's definitely a process that you have to do. Let me explain. We went ahead and measured, right? So we have to figure out ROI for a lot of customers. And one of the things we did was a recruiting letter in SuccessFactors, right? And we measured every step that it takes to generate the specific document, and that includes logging into the system and all those different things about it, right? So you're going to log in, you have to go to the recruiting module, you have to select a candidate, you're going to pick your offer, or you're going to pick the fact that you want to send them an offer letter. You then have to find the correct template. You might have to manipulate that template out there because you loaded it up with a bunch of paragraphs, so you can just cut and paste and take things out based on the requisition out there. And then you have to eventually send it off to the person. That was a short version of this, but all in all, it takes about 18 steps and clicks to get this document out. And it can take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes out there. Granted, if you just have a very simple offer letter, you only have one template, that process can definitely be shortened. You might have a very basic thing that you're doing out there, but most of my larger enterprises, they've got like 25 different templates and they're very complex to get out the door in a timely manner. And what you want to do is know what your current process is, even before you talk to a vendor, right? Don't go to a vendor and be like, help us figure this out. I'm telling you now, if you want to move the project along as fast as you possibly can, figure out what you want to do first. Just figure out the ones that are taking you the most time. Then it's your vendor's job, AKA perhaps SpinFX IT, to figure out how we can improve upon it, right? So we can take that offer letter. We're now logging into SuccessFactors. We just pick the candidate right from the screen. I'll actually show you this later today. and we generate the letter. And the letter's smart enough that we don't have to mess with templates. We don't have to mess with paragraphs and all that. It's just done for you. It saves the recruiter a ton of time out there. But you having that information up front, knowing, we've identified these core business processes as arduous, they're taking a lot of time, and we're doing them in a super high volume, that gives your vendor a whole, exactly what they need to say, okay, this is what we're going to gear towards for you. This is the ROI we can provide, and you can get this project off the ground a whole lot faster out there, because you're going to do the analysis, right? That's the final part. How do we do an analysis on what we're saving from document generation? So I put together these 6 documents out there. Let's say it's a small, medium-sized organization, maybe let's say 5,000 employees, right? If we look at this, they're generating about 300 offer letters, 200 termination letters, right? So they're a small, growing organization, right? Because they're hiring more than they're terminating out there. Maybe it's, high-tech industry, who knows? But we have six documents out there. And I know this looks simple, but it works all the time, right? How do we prove out our ROI? And there's a little trick in here too that we have to note too, based on a certain process. Let's just look at the first one, and we're not going to look at all of these. You'll get the deck and you can look at it later. Let's just take the basic confirmation of employment statement. HR has got to generate 500 of them a year. How long does it take an HR person to build it? Well, they got to go out, pick their Microsoft template, out of the share drive, go open up SAP or SuccessFactors, populate the data, and then send it away. Maybe that takes them 5 minutes. Maybe you have a nice basic one. There's nothing fancy about it. Simple. But that can add up, right? You can end up with 2,000 minutes over the course of a year generating just confirmation of employment statements. And you can see how this process, trickles down to our claim letter. Our offer letter can be more complex, right? You do 300 of those. It takes 15 minutes to build that. But when you're building on your ROI, and obviously before you talk to a vendor, you're working on the first 3 columns here: who generates it, what volume, how long it takes you to build. When you're looking at these business processes, you also have to take things into consideration that you're doing for a vendor. Most of my customers, a compensation of employment statement, I'm sorry, not a compensation of employment, an annual compensation statement or total reward statement, that might be done by a vendor. So you're not really generating that. Like, what's the time to build? What's the volume? You're sending that to every employee. And really the time to build, the 2 weeks, the 4,800 minutes we have here, is not really the time to build it. It's the time to update your spec and get it to the vendor and test it out there, right? And we're saying, with a document generation solution, since you own it, you know the rules, you can go in and tweak it yourself. The time is drastically less out there because you control the testing. You're not waiting on vendors and things of that nature. So if you have things that are outsourced, just look at them differently, because your time to build is not necessarily the manual effort each time the document is generated. It's the time that it takes for you to update that process every year with your specific vendor. And this is why our first title slide, it said, look at document generation because you can become a hero out there. Because if you just take these few 6 letters out here, based on my numbers, you're already saving 23 days of effort, which is 6 letters. And most of my customers out there, we're talking 50 and 60 documents across the board, through all of HCM when you look at it. So your numbers, and this is a small company, right? If you're a large company, these numbers can add up super fast from an ROI standpoint. And if you can go to any manager, at least if you have a good one that you're working for, and say, hey, look, I think we can save 60 days a year doing something, they're going to take a look, right? So this is what I'm getting at here. So you want to identify the areas that you can find improvements for DocGen. You want to, then measure it, and then you can, start doing your analysis with your vendor to figure out if this is something that you want to go through with out there. And what you want to look for is you want to make sure everything's compliant, right? Make sure that your vendor, and we'll talk about Strato now, that's our product, is completely integrated with your solution. So obviously SpinFX IT, we are an SAP shop. We integrate directly with SuccessFactors and SAP, whether it's Employee Central Payroll, on-premise, HANA, pick which one you got, as long as it's SAP HCM based, we integrate with it. So Strato is going to give you is obviously that full-on integration and data security. But we're also talking about now that centralized template storage. What you get with a DocGen solution, as opposed to your Word templates sitting out on SharePoint, is you now have a centralized template storage, and those documents are going to be generated programmatically, right? So that when someone goes in and generates that document, it's going to have the text, the fields, and exactly what you were intended the recipient to receive without any human error. That's the nice part about it. And of course, now you have also the traceability, right? Currently, you're probably sitting there going, who got a confirmation of employment statement? I don't know. It's all sitting in Trisha's email box. She's the one who sends them out. With the DocGen solution, you have traceability, right? You can see how many of these things were generated, who sent them out and when, right? So you're upping your level of compliance when it comes to getting a document generation solution. And you want to make sure they're smart. Right now we're moving into, maturity model level 2. So we have a solution out there that's generating the document for us, and it's doing it in a smart way, right? When we'll look at a recruiting letter, we want to make sure that offer letter has the paragraphs that are specific to that specific offer out there, right? An executive is going to have different information in their offer letter than a HR analyst is going to have in their offer letter. You want to make sure that the solution, and Strato does this, of course, it gives you that logic out there to make sure the person's getting the right document the first time. And again, the first thing you do when you go shopping for a document generation solution is you give that vendor your letterhead and your colors and how you want it to look and say, make sure this works, right? Your branding, I think, is one of the most important things that you have these days. And I think of it this way. It goes back to my original statement earlier. Good people are terribly hard to find, right? So I'm Steve Gallo. I'm an HR analyst. I'm applying for a job in Columbia, South Carolina, and I've got 2 offers in front of me. They're both the exact same pay, within a couple dollars, for similar companies doing very similar work, and I have 2 offer letters sitting in front of me. I want to make sure if I'm company X or company Y that my offer letter looks better than the other guys, right? It should pop. It should look nice. It should be exactly what we intended the customer or our candidate to see without having to, degrade that letter because the software can't cut it, right? So make sure whatever software you go with is going to support your branding out there. And make sure you got a user experience, right? So we'll even look at some of this today when we go into Strato. You want to be able to make sure everyone can use it, right? Can HR administrators produce documents for your employees? Can managers produce documents for their direct reports, right? Or even can employees, let's take the ROI to another level, can employees generate stuff for themselves, right? Instead of having HR generate that confirmation letter, why can't the employee just go in and generate it for themselves, right? Completely change the ROI game. There's no more time to generate. Just let them do it. So we want to make sure the user experience is improved across the board and that it's usable. Because these are just some examples of some of the documents. We only got like 3 more slides here, and then we're going to get into the system, right? You want to make sure, and I'm only showing you these because these are the ones I seem to build every time we go to a different customer, and it all starts with the offer letter, right? SuccessFactors offer letter is basic at best, right? It works, absolutely, totally works. But if you want it to look nice, probably not your solution out there. And we find a lot of people are still building these things in Word because they want their letters to look nice. And not only that, again, you want the right offer at the right time. You don't want to include, this is a very important document. It's not really contractual. You always have the paragraph at the beginning that this is a non-binding agreement, but you don't want to put in there that this person's getting, 10 weeks of vacation when they're really not out there because somebody forgot to cut that paragraph out. So you want to make sure they get the right offer at the right time. So 1, it's nice looking, but 2, it's got the logic in it to make sure somebody gets it correctly. And then of course there's payroll, right? So we're always looking at master data in HR and SuccessFactors, but our solution also talks to the payroll system, the number of documents that we come across that have some sort of pay component, or even a piece of data sometimes that's kept in SAP, ECC that didn't make it to SuccessFactors for whatever reason. Sometimes you have to cross-blend that data. Our solution can do that. So when you want to build compensation level statements and things of that nature, it's not just what you have stored in your comp module in SuccessFactors. We have that, of course, but it's also, what you have in the pay system, because the payroll system has those employer costs and those things of that nature that aren't going to be in any other system other than payroll. And then the most basic one, this is like the no-brainer to roll out. Get your employees running their own document employment certificates, right? I'm Steve Gallo. I need a bank loan because I'm going to buy a new car. I need proof that I work with this company and my pay. I shouldn't have to call HR for that. It's a no-brainer. I already know my salary. I know the date that I started. This is not like secure information out there that the employee doesn't have access to. Let them go run their own document and get that off your plate right away. Then we'll kind of take a look at some of that today. Because you want to move to maturity level 2. So maturity level 1, again, is you just going out and building your templates manually. You want to look at number 2, right? So maturity level 2 is something occurs in the system, right? HR keys a change, manager gets the approval, and then everything's okay. And then a document has to be generated. And maybe that's generated by HR, maybe that's generated by the manager. But in model 1, you're going out to SharePoint and getting your Word doc. In a DocGen solution, you're going into the DocGen solution and clicking the document for that employee, and it's automatically generating for you. Populate it with the correct data in the correct format with the correct paragraphs. And there's even additional steps. Maybe it's a contract and it has to go for a signature. Maybe it's that international move statement that I talked about, right? Strato can actually send that to an employee, get them to digitally sign it, and then it'll come back to you and you can upload it into the employee's records and you're good, all right? So you've taken that whole manual effort, the whole on both user experience sides. You just automatically generate the letter, the employee automatically clicked it, and it's back to you and life is good. But let's talk about maturity level 3, because that's where we're taking Strato in 2020. Maturity level 3 is you don't have to do anything, right? You set up Strato, or our document generation solution, to automatically do it. So the same process still holds at the beginning. HR keys a change, manager then approve it. But then Strato, you don't have to go in there and push the button to say, hey, let's send this off to the employee. It will automatically get generated, sent to the employee. It will get signed by the employee, and it will automatically get stored back in the employee's records, and you'll get notification that that occurred, right? So that's level 3. And we should have this out in the beginning part of 2020 within our system. And then, of course, to really do maturity level 3, you need to have some sort of storage solution. So when I think of like the holy grail of DocGen, especially in this day and age where not everything's centralized, I would like one centralized solution to do my DocGen for me. What do I mean by that? Right? Currently in SuccessFactors, if you got to build an offer letter, you go to recruiting. You got to build a comp statement, you're going to comp. If you want to build a talent card, you're doing that out of HR. Right? Wouldn't it be nice if there's just one spot, one solution where I can generate all of these things inside SuccessFactors for any of the modules? And that's what Strato is. And then more importantly, it's also one place to store them as well, right? So our storage solution's coming soon too, where you can say, all right, there's Steve Gallo. What documents do we produce for him over his life cycle? Or more importantly, hey, who actually got a merit letter last year, right? Let's search for merit letters and see everybody who got one out there, because now it's a centralized place. It's not sitting in someone's inbox. You can now figure out who got what and when. And with that, let's take a look at, we're just doing a high-level demo, nothing fancy, no deep dives. If you want to do deep dives, you can definitely contact us and we'll take you through it. I like to do this example because this business process, every company does. Every company I've ever worked for does this business process, right? So merit has occurred. Maybe you do merit in April, maybe you do it in the end of the year, who knows, right? So merit has been keyed into the system, and then the manager has to grab his team and he brings them into the office and he sits them down one at a time and he hands them a letter that says, thank you very much, here's your merit increase for this year. And you have a nice 5-minute conversation and he sends you on the way and says, all right, Steve, go send in Bill, right? But the manager, to build all those documents, is probably going out to a share drive, populating it, looking it up on his compensation spreadsheet on what the actual change was and filling it out and doing that manual, right? So you figure 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes per employee that you have in your organization out there, everyone's doing this. But instead, the manager can do this. They could go in their SuccessFactors and look at their documents that they're allowed to generate. So this is a Strato-based tile, as we can see. It's right now it's talking to SuccessFactors, or it's talking to itself and figuring out which documents are available for a manager. And we have this notice of pay change out there. That's just what we're going to run. Because again, Sydney up here, that's who we're logged in as, is going to pull some people into his office based on his staff. So let's say it's Monday, and on Monday, let's see who's working. So Shane's here and William is here. Let's generate documents for both of these guys. This is showing us a list of all Sydney's direct reports. So we'll generate 2 documents at a time. We could obviously select this whole list, but for the sake of demonstration, let's just pick 2 and we'll generate the document, right? Couple clicks, 1, 2, 3 clicks. Didn't have to go to SharePoint, didn't have to open up a Word template, and we're done. View the document, right? This is a business process that every company does, and every manager is spending 5 to 10 minutes per employee building this out, right? That's a no-brainer. There might not be bringing them into the office. I'm a virtual employee. My boss usually just sends it in an email and says, thanks. But here we go, right? Dear Shane, I'm pleased that you advised. This is reading data directly from SuccessFactors, right? Because the change was keyed. They store all that percentages and whatnot in there. Your salary increased by 2.4%. You're now making $70,800 a year. This will become effective in November 2019. Thank you very much, with a signature. And then you can go in here and download all of these documents if you see fit. There's even methods it's not turned on in here. There's sometimes an email button. Again, if you're virtual, he could just click the button here and send it to his team when he knows all his pay changes have been keyed out there with the little email attachment. So one business process everyone does. We just did it in, I don't know what, under a minute and a half talking about it. And this is cool. This is just a basic statement, like it's a glorified mail merge, right? It's just bringing in data from Employee Central and maybe even comp and populating it in our document. But we need some things that are smart sometimes, right? Let's take a look about the smartness of a document generation solution like Strato. I'm going to generate an offer letter. So maybe one of the first letters that an employee or candidate receives, a candidate / potential employee receives coming into your organization. Let's get started. Okay. So what this is doing is it's reading SuccessFactors recruiting, and it's figuring out everybody I have access to that's in the offer status. So we got Mitesh. Let's pick another one. Let's pick Mr. Suter. Now I'm picking these people intentionally because you'll see he's applied for the engineer 2 role. And we'll click generate. Generate, and here it is. But they're slightly different. One template, but slightly different, right? Because one of these guys, Mitesh, he works in the SpinFX IT Philippines, right? And he's going to get a job with this salary and these specific benefits. And also, look, he also has relocation out there. But when we look at Darren's letter, it's going to be slightly different, right? He works in SpinFX IT Australia, less benefits out there. We'll go back to the other document in a second, look at it, and he has no relocation. The document was smart enough to figure out what was on this person's requisition and that he doesn't have it. Back to the first offer letter. Again, he has one more benefit out there. What's also nice is you can't program everything into rules. That would be great to have a rule for everything. Every once in a while, the recruiter has to have some carte blanche, and maybe she's gotten approval from that. Because, for example, you might be hiring Mitesh, but Mitesh, he's been doing this for 30 years. He's not going to settle for your basic 2 weeks of vacation coming into your company. So you might have to, the recruiter might have to have carte blanche to say you will also receive 5 weeks paid vacation, right? What you can do with our system is you can set certain paragraphs or any certain area of the document to be editable after it's been generated. Obviously, the salary portion is not. That should stay in the requisition and or the offered details. So you can't change this. Not that you could set it if you wanted to let Strato, let the recruiter change it, but right now it's off. There are certain areas that you can change, which makes it kind of nice. And how does all this work, right? What's the end of our presentation here? So we're able to generate 2 different documents. We can, of course, send these to the employee, and we can even send these through digital signatures as well, because there's placeholders down here where it would go to Mitesh. It would first go to the recruiter to sign. It can go then to the hiring manager for signature approval, and then finally to Mitesh out there. So with Strato, you can build multi-step workflows if you have that, which I know is a limitation of standard SuccessFactors. We have capabilities that we can route it as long as the person's in your system, your recruiting system marked on the requisition, we can send them something. That said, how did all this work? All right. Obviously, we were just doing it from the generation standpoint, but I talked about ease of use in the slide deck, right? We talked about ease of use from generation. Can anybody generate the solution? But then can anybody build it, right? The next question someone's going to ask later, which I'm trying to avoid now, is does IT have to build everything for us? No, they don't. Does IT, can they build stuff for you? Sure. But if you got those super analysts out there that understand the data and SuccessFactors, they can definitely build their own set of documents. What I've done is I've gone into Strato. This is the Strato instance that sits in Amazon Web Services that is hooked into the SuccessFactors instance that generated our documents for us. Because here is the letter of offer that was generated out there. It was built here inside of Strato. And Strato is very easy to use. I tell customers, if you can build something in Microsoft Word, you can build it in Strato, especially from a design standpoint, right? So it's a what you see, what you get editor, right? You can make changes in here just like you would in Microsoft Word. Say we're not an Australian company anymore. We've moved to the United States. We're now an LLC. And then you can see it's, glorified mail merge, right? They put certain fields in here, and those are easy enough to get at too, right? We have dear first name. Perhaps you want last name. That's easy enough. It's not that whole token-based thing that you have in SuccessFactors where you have to predefine the tokens configured for the document, right? We can just sit here and say, I need last name in this document. Oh, there's the candidate's last name. Done, right? I didn't have to go through SuccessFactors config, define the token, then go into the document editor, add the token to the document, get it formatted properly. We can make changes on the fly right here whenever we want to. And then you see our certain paragraphs, right, that get included based on what's in the requisition. We didn't even see this stock options one today when we generated our different paragraphs. We literally just said, I'm sorry, we only saw the reload on the one guy, but it's real simple. It's not anything complex to say, how do we determine if stock options get shown? It's just a condition we put on it where the stock options only display this when the stock option is greater than 0. And you can get really complicated with these conditions if you see fit, because you have some sort of complex rule that says only display this when the guy works in England, lives in this area, works for this specific department, and has a shoe size of 8, right? You can pretty much put in whatever criteria you need to make sure that this thing gets generated properly out there. So that's Strato, but more importantly, that's DocGen as a whole, right? That was the idea of this presentation. So, what you should be looking for in a document generation solution. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is getting it off the ground. It's where to look, right? You're going to have some very specific business requirement that says, hey, we want to do benefits enrollment statements. Well, that's great. I can sell you benefits enrollment statement, but we also have this full-on DocGen solution. What are those other things that you could probably be using it for to help build your business case and define your ROI? With that, Becky, I will switch it back over to you for a few minutes of questions.
All right. Thanks so much, Stephen. Now let's review the questions from the audience that we have already. And once again, if you have any other questions, please type it in and we will answer you right away. So let's get started with the ones we have already. Number 1, how does your document system link in with the SuccessFactors and SAT?
That's a good question. To start with, we are SAP HANA Cloud certified out there. Strato is, and there's a little technical setup we have to do. It usually takes a couple hours with your basis team and your SuccessFactors admin and your provisioning. SuccessFactors has a standard way through some secure certificates, and it's called OAuth security, to integrate the single sign-on for third-party applications. So there's a few settings we have to apply to SuccessFactors and to Strato to allow the two systems to talk to each other. But again, it takes a couple hours to do if we get the right people on the phone. It's not very complicated. If you look up OAuth, you'll be able to see the certificate generation process out there. Next.
Okay. Do I need to have an Adobe Sign or DocuSign license for signatures to work?
Yeah, you do. And those, we actually support a third one too. We support, I believe it's Norway's government document signature. We're about to support Brazil's too. But yeah, for digital signatures, you do need a corporate Adobe Sign or DocuSign account. Those are the two vendors that we currently support in Strato. If you have another vendor that you use, let us know. We have built-in other integrations. Again, like we said, we built in Norway. We're building the Brazilian one to integrate with Strato, but you do need a license.
Okay, we have a couple more. Can I control which documents people see with SuccessFactors role-based permissions?
Yes, you can. So we have full, you didn't see it, it's back in the config of Strato, but we can control, first off, there's two things you can do with role-based permissions. One, we can control what you can do in Strato, right? So can this person edit a document? Can this person publish a document, right? The back end of it. And then yes, you can control which documents they see by the role-based permissions, especially those tiles out there. Right now it's a tile-based system. We're actually moving to this whole new dashboard-based system. And it's not a dashboard like metrics, like a dashboard of tiles built into Strato. That was a long way of saying, yes, we do support role-based permissions.
Okay. Last one I have in the queue right now. Is there a limit to the number of documents we can create and generate?
No, right now it's not. If you buy Strato and you want to build if you want to build 200 documents and you want to generate, thousands of them a month. I mean, we have customers generating, I think the highest one, this one customer is generating 8,000 documents a month out of Strato. They're a small airline in Asia Pac. Yeah, you can do that. We don't have any limitations.
Okay, great. That seems to be all the questions we have in the queue right now. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please go ahead and just send those on to info@spinfxit.com. With that, I want to thank everyone for attending today. Please do visit our website or follow us on social media to learn more about our other solution offerings. Thanks and have a great day, everyone.